In this Blender video, we're going to be setting up the textures for our building, as well as setting up the interior shot for our render. We're going to be setting up the textures for the inside of this building, as well as modeling furniture for it, and we will finish with just a couple render tips on top. So to start the texturing process, I recommend getting some textures for your building from websites like Polyhaven or Architectures, as I've shown in previous videos. To start, I'm going to select the exterior walls, and I'm going to go to Materials on the bottom right tab. And once we're here, we're going to click New to add a new material. And I'm going to hit this little yellow button on Base Color to add an image texture. I'm going to open to find my file, and I'm going to locate the image that I downloaded from the internet. I'm going to use this synthetic wood texture, and I'm going to go to the UV editing tab on top. I'm going to use the scroll wheel on the top ribbon and turn off the overlay just to show you the texture. There it is. Then I'm going to go ahead, turn the overlay back on the right side screen, and select all of this wall's faces. I'm going to hit UV, Unwrap, and Smart UV Project. Turn off the overlay, and you'll see that it looks a little bit funny. So to fix this, we're going to turn the overlay back on and make sure that everything's selected. And we're also going to hit A in the left window to select everything here. I'm going to hit R to rotate and type 90. I'm going to turn the overlay off, and you can see that our panels are now in the correct orientation. I'm going to hit S to scale it as well. And that's how you can really easily just fix your textures. Now, this works super nicely in my case, but if you have some parts that are still messed up, or you're not trying to do the entire object, you can take the individual face selector, and you can select just the ones that you need to, and rotate those in the left window to fix them. And the next step would be to texture everything here. And when you do that, I would leave out the windows because I'm going to show how to do a separate material for that. But you would do this exact same process on every object on the building. But first, I want to show you a little tip, which is how you can join the objects together so the texturing is a little bit faster. Essentially, we want to group together objects that are going to have the same texture just so that you're doing it once instead of doing it a bunch of different times. So these little overhang pieces and the screen, I'm going to shift click all of them and hit Control J to join them into one object. And now they're all one object, so if I apply a material to this, it's going to apply it to all these different parts of the building. I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the inside and exterior beams because they're all going to be the same material. I'm just going to speed up the footage here, but for the roof, I'm just adding a base color and turning up the metallic slider. Now that we've done that, I actually want to show you a little part that I messed up for the exterior wall. You can see there's a part we have to rotate here. So I'm going to go back to UV editing and turn on the overlay with face selection, and I'm just going to select these little faces right here because they need to be rotated. And I'm going to go to the left side window and hit R to rotate, and I'll type 90. Turn off the overlay on the right side screen, and as you can see it's fixed. You may notice that all of our different wood shades are quite different from each other, and this doesn't look cohesive for the whole render. So I want to show you how you can change the color in Blender. Just like the last video, we are going to select our exterior wall right here. We're going to change the color of this part. And we're going to go to the shading tab on the top ribbon. And from here, I'm going to adjust the viewport so we can see our wall. And then I'm going to move this node right here to make some space. And I'm going to Shift A to add, and I'm going to search for a hue saturation node. And I'm going to put this right on this wire, and it's going to connect it for us. Just like a Photoshop adjustment, it allows us to change the color super easily. You can use these different sliders to change it. Let's change the value to something higher. It makes the wood look brighter. And we'll turn the saturation down. That's a little bit too much. And you could also change the hue if you wanted to, but I'm not sure we really need to in this case. So I'm actually going to set it back to 0.5, which is the base. So once you've put all your textures on the exterior of the building, I would recommend kind of color balancing the entire scene using these hue saturation nodes. This is useful because it lets you not have to spend a ton of time in Photoshop afterwards, if at all. Right now, I am just color balancing these screens and overhang. I'm making them a little bit darker, and I'm turning the saturation up as well. And I'll also change the hue a little bit because it's not totally matching color-wise. I think that looks good. And I'll turn the saturation down just a little bit, and the value is going to go down even more. As you can see, the color of these two elements are working together a little bit better. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the concrete and the wood, and you'll see in this sped up footage that I actually use the roughness and metallic sliders under the material properties to make the concrete a little bit more shiny. Once we've done that, we're ready to start our windows. The way that we modeled them in Revit, the frame is also part of it, so we actually need to group everything together first and then separate. So just like this, you shift click to select all the windows and hit Ctrl J to join them. Once you've done that, we can hit Tab to go into edit mode. Because these were made with model in place in Revit, each part of the window was a separate sub-object within one object. So normally if you hit A, it selects everything, but if you hover over and hit L, it will select the singular sub-objects. So we made the glass as one piece, now it's selecting just that. If you're using a model from Rhino, you need specific export settings for it to group like this, otherwise it's probably going to make it all one object. So when I separate my parts, there are 3 pieces that we have to get. There's the wooden frame right here, and there's also the metal subframe, which is right here, the smaller black frame. And then there's also the glass panels themselves. So as an example of what we're going to be doing, I'm going to be selecting all the frames in this file. I'll just take a couple. Then I right click, go down to separate and hit selection. And now these are a separate object. Having these as separate objects are going to make it much easier to texture them. So now I'm going to speed up the footage of me separating the different parts, and you'll see that I group up the wooden doors with the wooden frames of windows because they're going to share the same texture. Once I've done that, I'm going to select the glass and I'm going to find it in the hierarchy. And this is because I want to rename it just so it's really easy to tell where it is in the hierarchy. So it's glowing blue if it's selected, and I'm going to type glass windows. Then I'm going to find the wooden parts of the door frames, call them door frames. And I'm going to do this for all the different parts. So these are all categorized in case we need to find them later and change anything. And now I'm going to go ahead and texture all these separate pieces. Now to make a glass material, we are going to select the window, go to shading, and add a new material. Now we're not going to use an image texture for this because this needs to actually have like reflections and things like that. So to start, we're going to take this principled BSDF and delete it. And we're going to shift A to search and look for a glossy BSDF. I'm not going to use glass, but we're going to use glossy for this. Then we're going to look for a refraction BSDF. Put that below. Then I'll look for a mix shader and put it in the middle. Then I'm going to look for a Fresnel node and put that up top. Now we're going to mix our glossy and refraction shader. And we're going to take the output of the mix shader and put that in surface. Then we're going to take the FAC of Fresnel and put that into the factor of the mix shader. Fresnel helps to give it that glassy look. We're going to turn the roughness down on the glossy node. Set the IOR of the Fresnel node to something a little lower, and we'll do the same one on the refraction node. And what I'm going to do to test how the glass actually looks, I'm going to go to the render preview viewport in cycles. And what we're seeing is a reflection of purely what is outside. This is not really what we want. We want to see what is on the inside of the building a little bit. So we're going to turn the render viewport off, and we just need to swap these two shaders. Put this one into the top, put this one into the bottom, and flipping those should fix it. As you can see, we can now see the inside of our building, and we still have some reflection on the glass. So let's turn the viewport off of render mode. I think our glass is looking good, so I think we're done with it. If you were looking to do an exterior render, I think this is just about everything you need to know, combined with the information of the last video. As I've said, you can preview it using the viewport, and you can also change the exposure in the render settings right here. You could also change the gamma, or you could even change the contrast. And there's also just a whole bunch of other settings you can play with in here. You can also click the edges of your camera or the camera itself and go to the camera data settings, and you can search for depth of field and turn that on, and you could actually play with the depth of field of your render. You can only really see it once you're rendering, but there's a lot of tools down here if you're familiar with photography. I think we can set up our interior view now, so we're going to add a camera, and I'm going to raise it up here just to see it. And if we hit the camera icon to go into it, you'll notice that it brings you to our original camera. So how we set this is by selecting the camera, hitting view, and then camera, and then set active object as camera. And now this is our active camera, and the toggle button works. If you want to go back to the other camera, you select the other camera and press the same buttons again. But now that we're in this camera, we're going to go down to the data settings for the camera, and we're going to change the focal length. Then I'm going to go to viewport display options and black out the edges. Then I'm going to hit N so we can move our camera around. I'm going to bring this camera inside and try to find a nice area that I want my interior render to be of. I'm going to turn the textures off real quick. I'm looking for something dramatic, so I'm going to look for a spot where the windows can bring in a ton of sunlight. This looks like a good spot. The only issue is I want my shot to be more vertical, so I'm going to go to Output, which is a tab on the right side, and I'm going to click and drag the resolution to something more vertical. Now be careful of the pixel sizes here. I actually don't want the pixels to get too crazy, so I'm going to set this one to here, and I'll change the other one actually. I'll try to make this a tall, skinny image. That looks good, so we're going to relocate our camera just a little bit more. I want to frame this so we see a post on the left side, and I also want to show off all three windows. And I'm remembering there's going to be a closet door on the left back side, so I'm actually going to twist this just a little bit more to show more of that. Now I'm going to turn textures back on, and we can see that our interior textures here are looking a little bit wonky, so we need to make some changes here. We need to texture the inside of our big exterior wall as something different than this exterior texture, so we're going to select it. If you hit L, it will unfortunately select the entire wall, so what we need to do is select the faces individually, and of course only select the faces that are within the view of the camera. And once we've done that, we can go to our material in the bottom right corner, hit the plus to add a new texture, hit new and assign it. And we're just going to use a basic color for this because that's the color that's the inside of my wall. Now I'm going to go ahead and make some small changes to the textures, add them where they need to be, and I'm going to find textures for the floor and for the ceiling. Now I'm going to show you how to use a PBR material. I'm going to do this for the floor. PBR materials are physics-based rendering materials. It actually takes in the light data of the scene and makes them look incredibly realistic. I'm only using it on the floor because I think it's a place that's important to use it. So I'll select my floor and go to the shading tab. And I'm going to make sure that in preferences I have Node Wrangler turned on. And from here, I'm going to click the Principled BSDF and I'm going to hit N. And I'm going to see this Node Wrangler tab on the right side. I'm going to hit Add Principled Setup. I'm going to locate my PBR material, which you can download from places like Polyhaven. We're going to select all of the related images for the texture. There's usually 4 to 5. Here we have the diffusion texture, the displacement, the normal, and the roughness maps. And we're going to add them all, and it sets it up for us. Look at that. We'll pull this viewport down just to see how it looks, and it looks a little funky right now. The first issue is the UV, so let's go ahead and unwrap it. And we'll go to the UV editing tab to scale it. And we also need to rotate our texture. Now that you've done that, we can see that our texture looks really grainy right now, and the reason for that is because of our displacement node. It normally allows you to actually extrude geometry through your texture, but we want to turn this down because we're not using that. So we're going to turn the scale down on the displacement node, and that will take away some of the grain. We'll keep a little bit there though. And if you wanted to change the color of your PBR material, you can go and locate your base texture node or your diffusion texture and add a hue saturation node in between that and your BSDF. I'd also like to show you an example of PBR materials. This is what the floor would normally look like without PBR, and this is the floor width. And then a more extreme example, when you turn displacement on, this texture goes from looking like that to this. And this is just a simple flat plane, but it mimics actual geometry. Once you've done that, we are going to play with our render and sun settings. I'm going to change our render mode to Eevee so we can just preview where the sun is without it being intense on our computer. We'll go to the world tab and we're going to set the sun size to something bigger. This makes softer shadows. Then let's check where our sun is right now. It's way over here, and that's not where we want it to be. If we go back to our camera, we want it to come through our windows on the right side. So we need to change the sun rotation. So we're going to try giving the sun rotation some values until we find something that looks good. I think 120 is good. This should be coming directly through our windows at a nice pleasant angle. Of course, you could use info from websites like SunCalc, but now I'm going to change the elevation just a little bit. I don't have anything specific. Once we have that set up, we're going to just preview this in cycles just to see how the sun looks. It looks all right. So now we're going to do the 3D modeling of the furniture. I've saved a separate file for this so that we can append it into our file, but also anything we model in here, we can add to any other Blender file as well. So if we do beds, tables, chairs, things like that, you can put that in any project you want very easily. We're going to start by making the bed. So let's delete everything in the scene. And we are going to add a plane. And we're going to go into edit mode and delete all but one vertex. I'm going to move to a top view. And now I'm going to extrude this vertex using dimensions from this. So I'm going to do the bottom part. This is 152 centimeters. So I'm going to type 1.52 for the bottom, hit enter, and I'm going to extrude, snap it to the Y axis and type 2.03. And I'll enter the same dimensions to finish the box. And to go the other way, I have to type the negative number instead. And then I'm going to select both of these vertices and hit F to fill. Then I'm going to select all of the edges and hit F to fill to make it into a plane again. Now we have a plane with the precise measurements of our bed frame. Now we'll hit E to extrude the plane. I have no specific thickness I'm going to use. I'm just going to eyeball it. And from there, I'm going to start adding some edge loops so we can define the legs and the backboard. So I'm going to hit Control and R to make an edge loop. And I'll pull it to the back to the thickness of a backboard. Once we've done that edge loop, I'm going to move to the underside of this bed frame, and I'm going to add some edge loops for the legs. So I'll hit Control and R to start an edge loop again. And I'll push this over here, and I'll create one on the other side with the width of both of the other ones combined. And then we'll make one go the other way and make a square for each corner. And this is kind of just a quick, rough version of a bed. If you wanted a more accurate version, you could, of course, look at real images of real beds and model them based off of that. Then I'm going to actually select these edges and move them over here to make a perfect square for the corners. Then I'm going to take the face selector and select each corner face. And I'm going to extrude them down. And of course, I'm going to go to a side view and think about the height of the bed. I'm just eyeballing it yet again. I'm thinking it's something like 0.4 meters and it's going down, so it's negative 0.4 meters. And I'm going to select all the legs and scale them down. But here it actually goes inwards, and that's not what I want. So I'm going to just do one leg at a time. I'm going to scale them by a value of 0.7. And I'll enter that same value when I'm scaling each of these legs to give it a little bit of a tapered look. And now we're going to select our backboard faces and we're going to extrude them up, making sure to leave some room for when the mattress is there. And I'm going to add an edge loop on the side of this to make this sort of square area. I'm going to select this face and I'm going to extrude it inwards, just for a little bit of detail. From there, we are going to make the mattress. We're going to add a cube. And I'm going to scale it on the Z-axis to the height of a mattress. And then I'll also scale it on this X-axis to make it the thickness or width of a bed. And we want to make this just a little bit smaller than the frame right now. And I'm going to make it a little thinner and we'll move it up. That's looking pretty good, but we're going to scale it just a little bit more on the Y-axis and that looks good. Once you've done that, we can go to Object on the top. Then we can apply all transforms. And this is going to help us with our next step. So we're going to go into edit mode and go to the edge selector. And we're going to select all the bottom and top edges. And this next step does not work unless you have applied all transforms. Once you've done that, we're going to go to this bevel button right here on the left toolbar. And I'm going to select this little yellow dot and pull it upwards. This also gives us a new drop-down menu on the bottom left of the screen. We're going to open that up. And we are going to change the amount of segments to something a little higher. That looks pretty good. This has beveled the edges of our mattress, and I think this is all we really need for it. I'm going to join it to the bed frame as one object for now. Once we've finished our mattress, we can now move on to doing the pillows. So to start doing our pillows, we are going to add a cube, and we're going to scale it down. I'll move it to the top of the bed real quick. And when we're doing this, we're going to use the pressure settings inside the physics menu. So when we do this, we want to make our pillows look a little thin because they're going to fill up with pressure. So we're going to make them about this thin, and I'll adjust the height, and I'll make them just a little bit wider than we would expect. And of course, if it ends up being too wide or too thick, we could just scale the entire pillow afterwards. But before we add any pressure, we need to go to edit mode on our pillow. And from there, we're going to hit subdivide. So we're going to right click and hit subdivide. Once you've done that, we're going to go to the bottom left menu and up the number of cuts. I think 30 is going to be good. Once we've done that, we are ready to go to the modifier tab on the bottom right. And we're going to add a modifier for generate and hit subdivision surface. Once you've added that, we are going to go to the physics tab on the bottom right of the screen, and we're going to add a cloth. Now let's scroll down and we're going to look for the pressure button. We'll turn that on. And let's set the pressure to something like 5. Then we have to find the gravity to make sure that our pillow doesn't fall. So we're going to turn gravity to 0. Now we should be all set to pressurize our pillow. So let's hit tab to go back to object mode. And from here, we are going to hit the play button on the bottom of the screen on the timeline. I would say save before you do this because it might be a little intense on your computer. And once you see it pass a point where it looks like the pillow that you want, you're going to go and hit the pause button. Then you can select the blue keyframe tab on the bottom left of the corner, and this will reverse the pressure and you can pull it back to somewhere where you liked it. I think I like it there, and our pillow is a little bit too long, so we're going to go to modifiers and we're going to hit this drop down menu on our modifier and we're going to apply it because otherwise our changes haven't been made to the actual geometry. We'll also apply our cloth modifier, and now this is actually our pillow's geometry. but our pillow is a little bit too wide, so we're going to scale it on the x-axis to make it less wide. I think that looks good. We will texture this pillow, but we're going to do that a little bit later. So now we're going to name our pillow in the hierarchy so we can keep track of it. And let's just lower it down to a certain place where it can sit for now. And the next thing we can do is create a blanket. So we're going to add a plane. We're going to bring it up top, and we'll go to the top view as well. And we're going to scale this to something that leaves just a little bit of overhang over the edges. And before we continue the blanket, I'm actually going to size up the mattress to cover the entire frame. Otherwise, it might have an issue when the blanket flops down and hits the edge instead. So I'm going to go into the bed object, and I'm going to select the mattress and just size it up a little bit. And now I'm actually going to separate the mattress from the bed. And then I'm going to move the frame and the pillow below because we just want the blanket to fall over the mattress, nothing else. Once you've done that, we're going to select our plane, which is our blanket, and we're going to right click and subdivide it. Let's set this to a really high number. The higher number, the more detail you get in the blanket, but it will also be more intense on your computer when you use the physics. Then I'm going to select this edge, just one. Then I'm going to Alt, Shift, and click the next one, which will select all of the edges. Once we've done that, we are going to extrude the edges and add a little bit of a hook above the bed, kind of like how some people make their beds. And once we've done that, we can go to the Physics tab on the bottom right, and we're going to select Cloth. And we don't really need pressure. I'm just going to make sure that Object Collisions is turned on inside of Collisions. And we're going to go to the mattress, select it, and we're going to turn on a collision in Physics. And inside the soft body and cloth settings, let's set the friction to something like 80. Then we can press the play button, and you'll notice the blanket will fall onto the mattress. Just like the pillow, we'll pause it once we see something we like, and we'll drag the keyframe back. Then in object mode, we're going to select the blanket, right click, and shade smooth. You notice the corners look a little bit funky right now. You could totally play around with the way that you let the blanket fall onto it, or you could fix it by hand by selecting the faces and edges, but we're not really going to see it in this render, so I'm not going to fix it here. Then we can go to the modifier tab and apply our cloth. And we'll drag the keyframe back as well just to reset it, or if we do anything else. And now this is our physical mesh, as you can see. As I said, you could manually fix those if you wanted to, but we're not going to. Now let's go to modifiers, and we're going to add a generate modifier. We're going to use solidify. And you can see that it already makes our blanket look a little thicker, which is really helpful for the fold on the top. And we'll set the thickness to something a little bit higher. That looks pretty good. I'm going to lower the mattress down here, and you could also set your mode to sculpt mode, and you could use some brushes to add a little bit of texture on the top of the bed to look like ruffles or creases. Some brushes are obviously better than others. I don't think those two are very good. Maybe try lowering the radius using things like crease. You can also scroll through your toolbar, and you will find that there are some cloth brushes as well. And these are really good for this situation where you're doing a bed. You could also do this onto your pillow or your mattress, but it just adds some really simple depth to your blanket. So try out some of these brushes, have fun with it. There's a lot of different options. In my situation, I don't think I'm actually going to use anything, so I'm just going to undo what I've done. I'm going to go back to object mode, and I'm going to move everything back up. Don't forget the pillow. I'm going to rename the blanket. Then I'm going to select the pillow, and I'm going to texture this now. Then I'll go to the texture viewport on the top right corner. And then I'm going to add a material and hit new. Then I'm going to set it to an image texture, and I'm going to open one that I already have on my computer. A floral fabric type texture. Now, in most cases, I would actually UV unwrap this, but because of the weird shape we have, I'm actually just going to keep it how it is, and I'm just going to scale it in the UV editing tab. And that already looks good enough. I'm just going to stretch it a little bit by scaling it on one axis. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to move the pillow down a little bit, and I'm noticing that the mattress is a little bit too small, so I'm going to scale it on the y-axis and move it to fill that gap. Then I'm going to select the pillow and I'm going to duplicate it with Shift D, and I'm going to rotate these to make it look a little bit natural and messy. Then we need to texture our blanket. It's more or less the same process. I'm going to use this blue geometric fabric pattern. And this one definitely needs to be unwrapped a little bit. The UVs are weird, so we're going to unwrap it. And we're going to go to UV editing. I'm going to turn the overlay on the right screen. And I'm going to select all in the left screen. And I'm going to scale it up. That's looking a little bit better. The sides look a little bit funky, but I'm going to leave them as they are for now. As for the folded part of the blanket, you'll notice that we can't actually select the faces of it. That's because we haven't applied our modifier yet. So we're going to go back to layout and we're going to apply it. Now we can select the faces. So I'm going to go back to UV editing and I'm going to select these bottom faces. I need the face selector for that. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to Shift and Alt click upwards on the next face, which will select the band going around the rest of the object. Once you've done that, we could totally rotate in the left side viewport and type 90 to rotate it to match. Or we could set up a different material for it because most blankets like this have a different tone on the underside. So we're going to give it a new material and just make it a base color. As for the materials, make sure that you turn the roughness up because they shouldn't be glossy. That's not how fabric works. Make sure to do this for your pillow and your mattress. And that will finish up our bed. You could totally add a rustic type of wood texture to your bed frame if you wanted to, but I'm just going to leave it as it is, or maybe just do a slightly darker base color. Now I'm going to select all of these objects and I'm going to join them into one so that when we append it into files, it's super easy to move the bed around as one object. This gave the mattress a new texture, so I'm going to assign it to a different one. They now all share the same textures in the material tab. Now I'm going to add a cube to start making our table. We're going to scale this down to something that you would imagine the size of a bedside table would be. Then I'm going to scale the height to something that I'm looking for, nothing specific. I'm going to move it up to the height that we want the table to be. And now I'm going to move it over here so we can work on it. And we're going to do a couple things to this. To start, we're going to use edge loops to get some corners with Control and R. And next we are going to bevel our edges, so we're actually going to apply transforms first. And now we're going to use the edge selector to select all of the bottom edges of our table on the outer edges. Then we're going to select the bevel tool on the bottom left and pull the yellow marker. And I'm going to pull it to somewhere about there. And let's give it some more segments. Once we've done that, we are going to go back to object mode. Next, we want to add some legs, so I'm actually going to go back into edit mode so that we're adding this cube inside of this object, so it's part of the same object. Some people would extrude the legs out of the tabletop, but I'm going to make them separate objects. I'm going to move this cube over here. I'm going to set it to wireframe mode, and we're going to scale it down to something that looks right. And I'm going to align it into this corner as well. Then we'll move this up so that the top connects. I'm going to scale it down a little bit more, move it back up, and we're going to take the face selector, take the bottom face, and we're going to move it down, and we're going to use the side view to make sure it aligns with the height of the bed. And then once we've done that, we are going to scale the bottom of the leg just a little bit. Let's go back to the top view, wireframe, and I'm going to move this bottom face out to the outer corner to give it this type of look. Then we are going to take the edge selector and select all of these outer edges of the leg. Then we're going to bevel the edges. This is really a common practice when it comes to 3D modeling for furniture, just to make the edges look more rounded and softer. Let's see how that looks. So we are going to go to the top view, and we are going to go into wireframe and duplicate and rotate each of these legs, making sure that you keep these corners aligned in the same way. Now we have all of our legs in place. Let's see how it looks. And there's all of our legs. Now, if we're doing this inside the edit mode, we're going to select absolutely everything, and we're going to add a new material. And I'm going to give it a wooden texture that I already have. Nice light one. And I don't even really have to unwrap this too much, but I'm going to do it anyways. And you can see that the legs are going the wrong way, so we're going to select all these and go to the UV editing tab, and we're going to select everything in this window and rotate it 90 degrees. That will fix it. And I'm going to scale the textures up a little bit. All right, now I want to select all of these corners because I want these to have separate textures like the real house. I will use the mask selection box and clicking the last couple ones that it doesn't catch. And now we need to give these corners a separate texture, so I'm going to add a new material. And I'm actually going to use the same texture initially, and we're going to darken this. So we're going to go to the shading tab, and I'm going to add a hue saturation node in between. And I will lower the value to simply darken the color. I'll also turn the saturation down too. That's all I really need. So now that our table is done, we will name it in the hierarchy. And then we're going to get started on our pot. We're going to add a mesh, and we're going to use a cylinder this time. I'm going to go to the top view, and I'm going to scale it to the general size I want it to be. Then I'm going to set it down onto the ground height. Then I'll move it out somewhere where I can actively work on it. Then I'm going to go into edit mode and select the top face and lower it. And then I'm going to extrude it up. This is another way to kind of get an edge loop to get these separate faces up top. Then I'm going to go to a side view in wireframe and use a mask selection from the side. This will select every face in the loop. Let's go back to our textured view. And I'm going to hit E to extrude, but then I'm also going to hit S to scale. So we're doing an outwards extrusion. I'm going to give it a little lip. And once we've done that, I'm going to select the bottom face and just scale it to make it tapered. And I'll extrude it downwards to do the exact same thing to give the bottom a lip as well. Then we are going to take this top face and we're going to hit I to inset. And then we're going to hit E and extrude it downwards. Awesome. Then I'm going to add a material and I'm just going to give it a muted powdery blue kind of color. Turn the roughness up as well, it shouldn't be shiny. And then I'm going to select the inside face, add a new material, and give it a soil-like color. Something dark brown. And the roughness of this should be pretty high because dirt is not shiny. And I'm going to add the actual plant in the other file, but if you wanted to, you could put your Polyhaven plant in here if you wanted to. But our furniture is done now. Now that we're back in this file, we're going to hit File and Append. And now locate your file that you just made with the furniture in it. This is where mine is. And make sure to go to the Object folder and select everything inside. We'll append it. And we're going to find our furniture. It's down here at the origin point. So we need to bring this way up. We're going to bring it up to the floor height of our second floor. Then we can move this into the room where we're making our interior render. And I'm starting to notice that our bed is looking a little bit too big. And I don't think there was a scaling issue. I think this was because we used a king size bed when the house actually has a twin size right here. So we're going to first separate our pillows And I'm just going to rescale the entire bed to something that will nicely fit. This won't be perfectly to scale, but this is just a quick fix for a quick issue we just found. Okay, now we can take our pillows and fix these onto the top of the bed. Let's move them down here, and we're going to scale them a little bit. Now we can go to the top view of our Blender file and set it to wireframe. And we can move and rotate our bed according to the shape of the room. We'll align it to this wall right here, and let's check it in the camera view. This is a good spot because it leaves space in between the bed and the closet to walk. And we need to move the bed a little bit so it's outside of the post. Now that the bed is in place, we can move our potted plants. I'm going to use the camera to determine where it should be. I'm going to place it on the edge of the view. We'll also start to move our table, but I'm noticing our table didn't get scaled with the bed, so I'm actually going to scale it down, but the scaling seems to have an issue where it's scaling from the center of the bed. So we need to right click and set origin, and we're going to set it to the center of mass. Now it comes out of the middle of this object. We'll scale it down, and we're going to move it according to the room. There it is. I actually went and rearranged the room just a little bit more off camera because I didn't like how it was sitting. But the next thing we have to do is add some scale figures, and you could totally Photoshop these in afterwards, but I like to use 3D models instead, and I find a lot of 3D models online for scale figures. So I've already downloaded one, and I'm going to append it because it's a blend file. But on the internet, you might find them as FBXs or OBJs. You would have to import it then, but I'm going to append mine. Now I have to find where my model is, and it's not at the origin, it's actually out here, and they have no texture. So we're going to get rid of the texture that they had, which was missing, and we're going to add a new one. And I'm going to take the surface, and I'm going to give it a standard glossy texture. I'll go with glass, actually. And I'm going to change the roughness to be a little bit higher. This will give it a sort of frosted glass type of look. I think this is fun and kind of abstract. And I'm going to move them inside, and I'm going to make sure that their feet are touching the ground. And I'm going to rotate them a little bit so that they're facing towards the closet. And we're going to go back to the camera view, and we're going to turn off overlay and just preview this in the render view to see what it looks like. Of course, cycles is pretty intense on the computer, so it's going to take a second. But we can see our strange kind of glossy look for our scale figure. If you don't like this, you could of course just use a base color or change the roughness of the shader. But I think this is kind of a cool look. Now we're almost done with our interior scene, so I'm just going to add a plant for the pot. I'm going to append it. I'll use a fern model that I already have. We're going to drag it up into our room and place it on the pot. Scale it down as well. Scale it up a little bit, and I'm going to rotate and duplicate this as well to make it look more lush. And once we've done that, we can go back to our texture view to see how it looks. And you'll notice that we have no texture on it, it's pink. This means that we're missing a texture that's supposed to be there. So we have to find them. I know that these textures are somewhere on my computer, so I'm gonna go to File, go down to External Data and find Missing File. And now you have to locate the texture that you're looking for. Mine are in this folder right here. I can see where they are. But you need to click on the file itself and find missing files. As you can see, it's found the files and placed them back onto the fern. So it looks good. Now I'm just going to model the closet door in the back of the room. Nothing really special. I'm just using a cube and scaling it up. And then I'll also add a cube in the middle to sort of look like the frame between two different doors. I also gave the door a texture. And I also need to make door handles for the door itself. And I'm not making these super high quality or detailed or anything because they're so far back, you're not even really going to see them. I wouldn't recommend spending a ton of time modeling details that are small or in the background unless they really draw attention. Now we are prepared to start our final render. The first thing we want to do is make sure that anything you don't want to see or render is totally turned off. We'll use the lady as an example. If we select her and find her in the hierarchy, we can use the eyeball icon to change the visibility in this viewport, but if this little camera icon is still active, it's still rendering. So if you don't want to render it, make sure to turn the little camera icon off, or you can see it in this viewport and turn off the camera to stop showing it in renders. But we're going to leave both of these on for now. The next thing to touch up on would be the render settings for the samples. So in the render settings, we can go down and see that there's a render subsetting. There's also viewport. We're not going to touch anything about viewport. We're only going to use the actual render settings. I don't touch the noise threshold, but the samples are what determines part of the quality of your image. So if you're making a big final board with a big back image, you would want the samples to be higher. And if you are making small images, I would make the samples lower. I like to do 260 and 250 and set the time limit to 15 minutes for just general images. So this image is going to be a certain level of quality and only takes 15 minutes to render. And of course, once you're ready to render, save your file and hit the render button in the top left and hit render image. And once it's done, you can hit the image in the same top left corner and you can save it from there. Now in the output tab, of course, our camera has a specific resolution to make it very thin like this, and you can use these sliders to change it. But if we head back out to the outside camera, now it's the same resolution and it's very vertical. So when I'm doing multiple shots in one project, I like to keep a sticky note or a notes tab where I can write down the different resolutions for each shot when I'm switching between them. There's probably a better way to get around this, but this is just the way that I do it. I'll also show you a little camera setting trick. If you click the bounds of your camera, or if you find it in the hierarchy and select it, you can go to the camera settings in the camera tab down here, and you can find depth of field and click this box to turn it on. And you could use the eyedropper to select an object to be the focus distance, or you could set it manually. And as I've said before, you could go to your render settings, change the exposure. I'm going to set our render to Eevee mode to preview it real quick. The exposure might be what we want for a shot like this. This is actually pretty good. But if we go outside, it might be too bright, so you might want to turn it down for an exterior shot. So yet again, keep a notepad and write these things down. Also the contrast options, of course. There's really a lot of options for processing the images inside of Blender, but you could, of course, post-process these things in Photoshop afterwards. Once you start rendering, it's going to look something like this. You're going to have a really pixelated image, and maybe chunks of it are going to be missing. Just be patient, give it that 15 minutes that we set it as. It'll show you how many samples you're going through, and it'll tell you the remaining time and how much time you've taken in the top left corner as well. Once it's done, the timer will stop counting down and it will just tell you how much time it took, and the samples will be 260 out of 260. Then you can click image and you can save a copy or save as. And that's how you can create an image that looks like this. If you want to replicate this carpet, go to one of my previous videos covering vegetation and watch the guide on how to create grass and just substitute the base texture with the carpet one. Thanks.